So hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Effer. I am the Deputy Director General of the International Fertilizer Association, IFA. And today I'm pleased to talk about how will advanced farming techniques help strengthen the GCC's self-sufficiency agenda. So let me start my presentation with a few figures about the GCC agriculture features. So first, the cropland area relative to the total area of the countries is pretty small compared to the rest of the world. In the case of Oman, it is as low as 0.4%, and it can go up to 8% in the case of Kuwait. And as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it is 1.7%. And the other important number is really the irrigation size. In most countries, 100% of the cropland is irrigated, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, where it is a bit less than 50% according to FAO statistics. Just here a few photos to illustrate the kind of agriculture that is found in the GCC area. You have intensive farming system under central pivot, palm grove that can be pretty intensive as well as let's say a relatively mixed farming systems where you find both pivots and more traditional smaller size fields and let's say more smallholder farming systems like here. The region is characterized by widespread stresses, abiotic stresses, and the main one is, of course, is water stress. In the case of Saudi Arabia, most of the land area receive less than 200 millimeters of rainfall per year. Also, there are important aquifers, but these have been largely depleted by agriculture in the previous decades. So it is important to produce more crop per drop. And even it is important to produce more with less of everything. That's valid for the GCC region, but also worldwide. But it's not only about water stress. There are other stresses experienced by the regional agriculture, like heat stress, salinity stress, and even in some cases, cold stress. What is really essential? That's about increasing simultaneously resilience and efficiency of the farming systems. It looks like to be simple, but I can tell you that's not straightforward. So what are the options for the GCC region to improve food supply? There is a first set of options, which I would call the virtual land and water approach. Could be importing food, especially staple crops from abroad, or as well acquiring land abroad, which Saudi Arabia has done in some part of the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. The second option is the AgTech approach. And here it is about better conserving water with techniques such as reduced tillage. It's about using inputs more efficiently, especially water and nutrients, with techniques such as fertigation. It is about being much more precise in managing resources using data. It is about controlling the environment with, for instance, glasshouse farming. Another important option is enhancing plant physiology, which can be done through plant genetics, but also using biostimulants. And finally, it could be through fully controlling all the parameters through vertical farming. So let me just address 4 of these options. I don't have enough time to address all of them. But we'll talk about improving use efficiency of inputs, looking at data-driven farming, looking at biostimulants, and finally, vertical farming. So as far as input efficiency is concerned, let's have a look at nitrogen use efficiency, which is basically the ratio between the output, what has been removed with the harvested crop, and the inputs. And here you see the trends for Saudi Arabia from the early 80s until 2017. So the blue curve illustrates what has been removed, which reflects the crop output or crop production. And the red line, the evolution of the mineral fertilizer input, The brown line, the input of nitrogen through manual recycling, and the green line of biological nitrogen fixation, which is negligible in the region. And if we calculate the ratio between the outputs, so the blue line, and the sum of the inputs, we get the evolution of nitrogen use efficiency. And this is a trend. It has been declining now for a few decades, and we are, current levels are very low. For Saudi Arabia, it is about 15%. That would be the same for Qatar and a few other countries in the region. And that's to be compared to the global average of 50% and the target of 70%. So 15% means that less than 1 kg of nitrogen applied to the crop out of 6 kg is taken up by the crop. That's very low. So to improve nitrogen, but also phosphorus and potassium use efficiency, farmers should apply the 4R principles of nutrient stewardship, which is about applying the right nutrient source at the right rate, at the right time, in the right place. There is a range of best management practices in each of these 4 areas of nutrient management. The 4Rs apply also pretty well to water management. It is also, as far as water is concerned, about applying the right source, the right quality of water, in the right amount, also at the right time and right place. And there are multiple interactions between water management and nutrient management, which we have to take into account when managing the one or the other. And on top of that, there are interactions as well with crop management and soil management, which makes it pretty complicated. And some things that we have tended to overlook in the past is all these interactions between especially water and nutrients. And we need to look much more closely at these issues from an integrated way. And this is illustrated by the figure on the top right, which shows results of, let's say, field experiments in the Canadian prairies, which is fairly, let's say, dry area as well. And the blue segment illustrates the contribution of water to yield increase, the brown one of nitrogen fertilizers, and the green one of the interaction between nitrogen fertilizers and water. And we see that this interaction is the most important component. It's more important in terms of yield impact than nitrogen or water impact alone. And a way to optimize this interaction between water and nutrient is fertigation. So that's the application of water-soluble fertilizers together with water through the irrigation system. And the nice thing with the fertigation is that it can be adjusted on a daily basis. We can adjust the supply of water and of nutrients on a daily basis according to the evolving needs of the crops along its crop development cycle. And that's a fantastic way to optimize water and nutrient use efficiency. For instance, with drip fertigation system, nutrient use efficiency level of 90% can be achieved, which is compared to the 15% I referred to earlier in Saudi Arabia. Now let's move to data-driven or precision farming. So the goal of precision farming is about optimizing and automizing farming. And that requires a lot of data, which can be collected through farm surveys, which can come as well from sensors above ground, looking at measuring parameters above ground and below ground, can come from soil mapping, from weather stations, etc. We put everything into a database, and that has to be standardized. The nice thing with that is that it allows to understand what happened. And that will help as well to make diagnostics and understand why did it happen. And once we have this information, we can go into predictive analysis and look at what will happen and finally optimize actionable agronomic solutions for the farmers. And for this, as I mentioned, it's about big data. It's also about the Internet of Things, connecting everything as illustrated on this CropX scheme, where let's say, the database is connected to sensors, to weather stations, to satellites, to various kind of maps. And it runs a number of models for crops, models for water management. And at the end, it helps providing decision-making, let's say, advisors to the farmers. And that's very useful. And these decision-making support tools can even be connected to robots that will implement the best management practices. Well, that's a fantastic option to optimize resource use efficiency, whatever the resource, whether that's water, whether that's nutrients. And that applies in the both rain-fed and irrigated conditions. Now, let me say a few words about enhancing plant physiology and especially about biostimulants. Biostimulants are products stimulating plant nutrition processes independently of the product's nutrient content. Doesn't matter whether it contains some nutrients or doesn't contain any nutrients. The mode of action is not based on the nutrients. The main, let's say, characteristics of biostimulants is that they improve at least one of the following, let's say, parameters: nutrient use efficiency, but also tolerance to abiotic stress, quality traits, and the availability of confined nutrients in source or rhizosphere. And in the case of the GCC region, the first two are very important. Improving nutrient use efficiency because it's very low, and also tolerance to abiotic stress because they are widespread in the region. So what are biostimulants? In fact, there are four main categories. Can be plant or seaweed extracts, can be organic acids such as humic and fluvic acids, can be amino acids, and also can be microbials. So this figure illustrates how biostimulants, the different kind of biostimulants, can help address different kind of abiotic stresses. In fact, there is not a single biostimulant that will help address all of them. They are very specific. So we need different kind of biostimulants depending on the kind of abiotic stresses. Just for your information, the biostimulant market globally is assessed at about $2.5 billion, which is not negligible, and it is, let's say, experiencing a double-digit growth rate. Now, moving to fully controlled farming, I would like to mention vertical farming, which is, let's say, the latest level of technology in terms of farming. It's about, let's say, fully controlling the environment. Here, temperature, relative humidity are fully controlled, as well as lighting, whether that's about intensity, whether that's wavelengths, or whether that's the duration of lighting. It's also smart farms where everything is fully connected. So there are sensors everywhere and everything goes into a database which will, let's say, then feed a loop and will help optimizing management. It's also an option that optimizes land use, because on the same hectare, you can really stack several layers of crops, can be 5 or plus layers stacked vertically. It's an option that requires as well fully understanding plant biology, and you can really optimize this understanding of biology. Something important, interesting, is really the way of fertilizing crops under vertical farming. There are mostly two options. One is hydroponics, where the plant roots are in a solution, which let's say is a mix of water with nutrients, or aeroponics, where the roots are in, let's say, receive nutrients and water through a mist. And these are completely closed loop systems where everything is recycled. Water is recycled, nutrients are recycled. So there's very little losses. And for instance, as far as water is concerned, producing a given crop can result in a 95% reduction of water consumption compared to the same crop under field conditions. It's also important, I mentioned reuse and recycling of nutrients and water, but there is also recycling of crop residues, as illustrated in the diagram on the bottom right, where the crop residues will be used to produce biogas and nutrients and carbon dioxide. And by the way, carbon dioxide can go back into the vertical farm, because once all the inputs are optimized, carbon dioxide can become the limiting factor, and there is a need for an additional input of carbon dioxide. It's also a fertilizer in that case. Vertical farming is also very well integrated with cities, which means provides a very strong transportation advantage. It can be also integrated with livestock or fish farming in order to close all the loops. And something interesting in the GCC region is that there is some interest from startups now in the region about vertical farming. For instance, Red Sea Farms is developing vertical farms, looking at the use of salt water. AeroFarms, which is one of the world leaders, now is being established in the Emirates. So just to wrap up, water is the main constraint in the GCC, no doubt about it. And also we have to keep in mind that nutrient use efficiency is very low. That's true for nitrogen, but as well for phosphorus and potassium. The overarching goal of farming should be to improve resilience and efficiency simultaneously. It's not the one or the other, it's the two at the same time. I'm strongly convinced that the GCC will continue to rely on imports for staple crops because owing to, let's say, water and land scarcity in the region. The region will never be self-sufficient for staple crops, especially cereals. At the same time, it should adopt high-tech farming for higher value crops and mostly for the regional market, again, because probably of the scarcity of resources and therefore the region that doesn't have a strong competitive advantage for the global market. Application of so-called standard-based management practices for nutrients and water can already make a big difference. It would help moving from these 15% to potentially 50% use efficiency. But then we have to move into, let's say, more sophisticated practices such as fertigation, precision farming, biostimulants, vertical farming I referred to bring water and nutrient use efficiency to the next level, to further optimize the efficiency in these two important inputs. And something essential is that there is no single best solution, no one-size-fits-all solution, and we need to provide a toolbox to farmers, depending on their local conditions, to their access to market, to their availability in water, and whatsoever. And that's the farmers who will decide what is the best available technology for themselves. And the fertilizer industry should really seize these opportunities for diversifying. And that's why at IFA we launched a Smart and Green conference this year, which is about plant nutrition technologies, and which is also about bringing the, let's say, mainstream fertilizer industry together with the startup ecosystem. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope that we will see many of you in 2 weeks' time at our annual conference in Lisbon. Thank you very much.